Okay, we are now joined by a guest that you may have seen on the sidelines this past weekend. Also, probably saw her over the course of the last, I think, 8 or 9 years in South Bend. It's NBC Sports' Kathryn Tappen. Kathryn, thanks for joining us on Wake Up the Echoes. It's a thrill to have you here. I want to start with just this past weekend. You've been coming to South Bend for, I think, close to a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
Where did this atmosphere rank for you? Because I was walking around campus. I've never seen this place the way it was on Saturday night. You've seen it up close and personal. Explain to me what the energy was like down there.
Yeah, first of all, Tony, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you. And I would say, that was the most people I've seen on campus in the days leading up to the game that I've ever seen. Yes, to your point, this was my 10th fall broadcasting a game at Notre Dame. I did 8 seasons on the sidelines. My 9th season last year was hosting our pregame and halftime coverage from the field. And then being back for this one game this season was great. But so I've never seen that kind of a buzz starting on Thursday. I mean, when we got there, I was like, where are all these people coming from? And then, we stayed downtown and at the same hotel, and we had Ohio State fans in there. There was a big alumni contingent. There were a bunch of activities that they were doing on campus. So they started rolling in Thursday. All day Friday was, pulling up to the Goog for our normal meetings with Marcus Freeman and the coordinators and the players. I couldn't believe how many fans there were. I mean, normally I see students walking around campus, but I always make my way to the grotto at some point after our meetings on Friday afternoon. There were tour groups. There was a group from an Italian culture club that was there. There were people everywhere. I was like, wow, this is a different level. And, clearly you had all the activity on the library lawn there in front of Touchdown Jesus. You had Pat McAfee's show on Thursday or Friday rather. You had game day all day Saturday. So you got the sense that it was a big game. We knew it was going to be a big game. You got the sense of that when we arrived on campus. I've never seen it like that.
Yeah, and amazingly, the game itself, I know the result didn't go the way Notre Dame wanted it to go, but it lived up to the hype as far as a spectacle. I just saw also that it's the most watched regular season game on NBC, I think since 93.
Yep.
So it tells you how much interest there was. Just in your time covering this team in college football, have you been involved with a game that had that many late game twists and was that dramatic at the end?
No. And was that dramatic in the beginning too, I think. I think the number was like 14.5 million people that we had on Saturday night, which is just awesome. But what I love is that the game lived up to the hype, and you never know what you're going to get. But both coaches talked to us during the week and said, this thing's going to come down to the final whistle, which is exactly what happened. But I could not get over when I looked at the scoreboard approaching halftime before OSU kicked the field goal. I was like, 0-0. I mean, I don't even remember the last time I watched a football game that was 0-0, let alone 2 top 10 teams that have high flying offenses. You've got Sam Hartman and Audric Estime. You've got the greatest wide receiver in college football on the other side, Marvin Harrison Jr., and literally no score on the board. Like, that to me was an incredible storyline. The way these defenses were playing, the battle at the line of scrimmage. And then, you look at what that game brought. I think, I'm sure the rating I haven't looked at all the notes from NBC PR yet, but I'm sure more people started tuning in too, being like, holy cow, we got a great game. And the buzz starts to go as the game gets bigger and bigger. But I've never been a part of a game like that. The twists, the turns, to your point, like waiting with bated breath towards the end, wondering, okay, I've got a list of about 8 guys I could potentially interview in a matter of 45 seconds from now. Like, I have no idea which one I'm going to get. And, that becomes nerve-wracking for me because you try and prepare your best for these post-game interviews. And I'm like, I have no idea who I'm going to get in a matter of 30 seconds. So
I wanted to ask you about that. That's one of the things that interests me most about your job and the unique role you have in the broadcast, because let's say either one of those teams went out and was taking a knee to end the game and won handily, you'd probably have more time to plan exactly who you might talk to, whether it's the winning coach and the ideal player. In this case, like you said, it sounds like you maybe had 8 different people you might talk to. So talk me through your process on the sideline. How do you keep everything straight? Because also, I went down and watched a drive or two from the field. And for me, it's so much more difficult to follow the game on the field than when you're watching on the telecast with all the different aides we have watching at home. So what are you doing to get ready for that moment where you, depending on what happens in the final play or two, you're going to go talk to so many different potential people?
Yeah, so I have the benefit of having monitors on the field. So normally the near left 20 and the far side 20, I've got monitors that are there all game long. This year, they've incorporated a roving monitor. So I've got a guy that's literally standing next to me with a monitor of the game broadcast. So anytime Todd Blackledge or Noah Eagle are showing replays, I can see it in my monitor. That's something that Sunday Night Football has always had, and we brought that in for Big Ten coverage, which has been great. So I could be anywhere on the field and see a replay or see, if I have to present an injury report, I can look at the monitor and watch what I'm talking to. But yeah, with regards to the interview, I mean, it comes down to, we know we're going to get the head winning coach. But at that point, I'm like, okay, it could be Marcus Freeman. And there was a moment where we actually thought Notre Dame was going to win. So I'm like, all right, start prepping for Marcus Freeman. I'd say
a lot of us thought they were going to win.
Yeah, with about 7.5 minutes to play, I was in, my producer who was in the truck was communicating with me, and we're like, all right, let's start coming up with questions for both sides. So I kind of knew what I wanted to ask Ryan Day. I knew my first question that I wanted to ask Marcus. But then I said to my producer, I'm like, listen, the end of this game is going to determine that first question. Because if Notre Dame wins, the fan base is going to come onto this field, and that is the opening question, just the pandemonium and the magnitude of this victory. And then if it's Ryan Day and they win, that's a whole nother story tell. So I started prepping my questions with about 6 minutes to play. I thought for a moment, I was pretty confident. I'm like, all right, it's going to be Notre Dame. And then boom, I don't know, 20 years doing this, I don't know why I always think like, oh, it's going to be, we got this, we're good. I'm like, no, if sports has taught us anything, it is like, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. And so sure enough, I was down right at the end zone with OSU driving. And I was standing next to Marcus Freeman watching the way he was calling the game. And I'm looking at Katie Lonergan, the SID for Notre Dame. And she's kind of looking at me like, I'm like, I can't tell you right now. Like, I don't know. It could be one or the other. So, when they won, I ended up sprinting across the field. I grabbed Coach Day after he shook hands with Marcus Freeman and he congratulated one of his players. But at that point, we're up against the clock. We're off the air at 11. We did have a little leeway. I don't know how many minutes, a couple minutes to spare. So I was able to get the head coach and the winning quarterback, Kyle McCord. So again, those questions became, I've got a piece of paper and one page is Notre Dame and one page is Ohio State.
Right.
And I've itemized my priorities, and then it's just game on, and then really it becomes the response of the coach and the response of the quarterback or whatever player you're interviewing, this. That's your follow-up question. Like, what did they say? I was not anticipating the follow-up I was going to have to ask with Coach Day. But
I don't think anybody was anticipating that one. I think I talked to Allison Williams once, and her biggest tip to young broadcasters was like, you got to listen. And it's really hard because you're on the field, but like you said, you have to listen to what they're saying and following up with it. I wanted to ask you about just being back on campus and in town. When we were talking before you came on here, because you only now made it back for one, you used to come every home game. Just what was it like seeing some of the familiar faces? I know you developed a lot of great relationships here in your time in South Bend. To be back on campus, obviously for a huge event, but to see some of the people you hadn't seen as regularly, what did that mean?
Yeah, well, it meant the world to me. I mean, I think, that's a special place. I started covering Notre Dame football in 2014, and I was overwhelmed most of the weekend, to be honest with you, with the warm reception I received from everybody, from the staff at the Aloft Hotel to, we rolled into LaSalle Grill on Thursday night with 9 of us and looking for a table. Well, I didn't know it's trivia night on Thursday nights at LaSalle, and you have you have to pre-reserve your seats, and they remembered us, and the Brian who works there and all the great staff at LaSalle Grill like just totally cleared a table for us and got us in and fed us, and it was amazing. And then arriving on campus, going to practice, and then also meeting with Marcus Freeman and seeing the same people that I saw for so many years in the Goog, the coaching staff. I mean, every coach came in and gave me a hug and was like, it's so great to see you. Great to have you back. Then the ushers in the stadium on kickoff on Saturday night were coming up to me and saying hello. And I was overwhelmed. I mean, Jack Swarbrick, we miss you around here. It's so great to have you back. And, that's unusual. I mean, Notre Dame is a special place. And I've said this many, many times before, love it or hate it if you cheer for them or you don't. It's a special place. There is a spiritual sense of, higher learning and high, all the great things that come with a very good institution, but then it's good people around it as too. Father Jenkins on the sideline. I forgot about him. I mean, you name it.
Right.
I was really blown away, and I was humbled, and I was grateful because I certainly loved my time covering Notre Dame football. I'm now doing it on a different level with Big Ten college football. I hope in years to come that I will be, making my way back to South Bend for more games or more visits perhaps. But I was blown away, and I was really, really, really happy about it. It felt really good to be back.
It was great to see you down there. I wanted to ask you, you kind of transitioned me towards what I want to talk about with your new responsibility with the Big Ten. I just always find it interesting when we talk to people in this industry. You used to know when the Notre Dame schedule came out, okay, I've got these 7 home games on these dates. You probably knew a few months in advance. When I saw you on the field the other night, you were telling me that you don't even necessarily know what your game might be a couple weeks in advance. So I guess what's the difference between preparing for your Big Ten games now and maybe what's exciting about seeing even more of college football?
Yeah, well, just that alone is very exciting. Going to these college towns, now I get to see a lot more of them than just South Bend. But there was a sense of understanding with Notre Dame football. Come week 3, week 4 of covering that team, you knew the team inside and out. You kind of have an understanding of what it's all about. And it's not every weekend. So it was very easy those 7 weekends of the year to get prepared and to get ready to go to South Bend. There was a familiarity with where we stayed, everything about it. Now it's totally different. To your point, we just found out where we're going next weekend. So I've got to start to get my flights together and but we have such an incredible research team at NBC Sports. So getting prepared for the game, my prep for this week started on that flight home yesterday from South Bend. And it's okay. It's Michigan State, Iowa. We're heading to Cedar Rapids. Let's get our storylines in place. Let's watch their games from Saturday night, Saturday daytime. And then you've got 2 rosters you've never seen before. You've got transfer players that are totally different from last season with these teams. So it just becomes almost like studying for an exam, cramming for an exam. You got to learn really quickly about these 2 teams. And also I think the curiosity that we bring, because we don't cover them on a regular basis. There's an element of advantage to that as well, because maybe you're asking questions that a local beat writer might not ask because it's just understood. We have an audience that we can't assume is going to know anything about either one of these 2 teams. Mm-hmm. So we look at it from 30,000 feet. What are the biggest storylines? And then ultimately the game's going to determine the way the broadcast goes.
Something I also wanted to ask you, just a little bit big picture, and you were talking to me before we started here about how you were speaking to a school today, giving some tips to some young students that might be interested in getting into broadcasting. And I'm always interested. Everyone has a different journey to get into broadcasting. And the landscape, as you know, has changed so much today than when you started. But what are some of the tips you give to young people, whether they're in high school, college, just starting out, for how they can carve out a career? You obviously have a job that I think tons of people who watch this would love to have, right? They fly you around the country to broadcast Big Ten football. Like that's a great gig. And not necessarily everyone can have that job, but to get into the industry and kind of carve out a path, I guess what worked for you and what kind of advice do you give people that want to break in?
Yeah. I had the opportunity to speak to a high school in my town. And anytime I get that opportunity, I grab a hold of it, whether it's colleges or high schools. I'm amazed that high schools are now interested in bringing people like me in, because when I was growing up, that wasn't even an option. But they're more and more getting media programs, getting media classes as part of their curriculum. Certainly at the college level, that's definitely an advantage. But I think, today that question was asked of me, what advice would you give to somebody starting out? And it would be the same advice I would give anybody in any industry. I think start building your network. Start building. Everybody you meet along the way is going to be somehow relevant down the road. I can guarantee it. If someone comes to speak at your class, shake their hand after class, get their information, even if it's just a simple thank you for coming to speak to us. You're on their radar and they may need you for something down the road. Right. So I think building the network is a big thing. And then, looking people in the eye, shaking their hands, being present in the moment. Everybody's so consumed on social media and on their phones all the time. You may be flying on a flight and not even realize the person next to you who it is, and that could be someone that could help you. But if you're constantly looking down and not keeping your eyes open and aware of everything around you, you might miss something really important. And again, that goes for really anything. And I don't have the answers as far as how to get into this business. It's very different from when I got in. Yeah. I mean, I applied on tvjobs.com to every small market in the country and got rejection after rejection after rejection, and ended up at NBC 10 in Providence, Rhode Island, because someone gave me a chance. And that's what it takes. You've got to get your foot in the door. Someone will give you a chance. It's what you do and what you make of that chance when you get there that's really, really important.
All right, Kathryn, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with our From the Irish question. All right, Kathryn, it's time for our From the Irish, presented by TireRack.com question of the week. We always have listeners submit questions. I've got a great one here. It's from DJ in Oldsmar, Florida. He says, among all the sports that you have covered, which one brings you the most joy?
Ooh, oh my gosh, it's so hard. Oh man. That's a really good question, BJ. And I get asked that a lot because I do have such an opportunity to cover so many great events. I would say there's nothing like being on the sidelines of a football game, whether it's college or NFL. I love college. I love the noise in the stadium. I love the pomp and circumstance, the traditions, the smells, the sounds, the helmets clanging, the bodies hitting the turf. Like everything about it is so real and it's so authentic. And then you get kind of insider looks into what players are really about when you hear the chatter at the line of scrimmage. You know, you hear things that you wouldn't normally hear, which it's almost like inside baseball, football. So I would say, but as much as I love the college football sidelines, I also love the NHL, and I love the game. I love the players. I love the sense of integrity, the sportsmanship, you know, the tradition of shaking hands at the end of each series during the playoffs. Like you don't see that in every sport, each round of the playoffs. So I would say, I think it's a combination of both of those. The sidelines and then the NHL are two of my favorite events to be able to cover.
Okay, I'm also getting, they're hitting me in the IFB here. This is from Mike T in Ann Arbor. Might also be based out of Syracuse. I don't know exactly, but he's saying to me, Mike T. I think he was. Where were they last night? Where were they? They were in
Vegas.
They were in Vegas last
night. He might
night.
still be stuck in Vegas.
Yeah,
Maybe
this is actually
Mike Vegas. I mean, if I were Mike 3, I'd be in Vegas too.
Yeah, Mike T from Vegas says, who is your favorite NBC announcer that you've ever worked with? And this is a tough one.
Oh my gosh. I mean, my least favorite is this guy named Mike Tirico. No, I'm kidding. I have to say, like, I give NBC credit for hiring some of the greatest people because I cannot even pick one. I've worked with such amazing individuals. I mean, and the best of the best. Mike Tirico, Doc Emmerich. You know, I've been on the set with Keith Jones in hockey. You know, Dan Hicks and on golf and on Notre Dame and Tom Hammond. And I can't even name one because what I will say about most of the people I have worked with and really at NBC, they just value me being there and they respect me and they are incredibly endearing and we all become a family. We're on the road for a long, long time together. You become a working family, but you also become incredibly close off the air because you're having meals together. You're there when you're answering phone calls that might be tough. I mean, I had my colleagues in the car with me when I got a phone call at Notre Dame. We were on our way to practice and I found out my uncle passed away suddenly. And you know, you're in those moments, those very, very sensitive moments with people that you're working with, but they're more than just your colleagues. They're your family, they're your friends. So Mike was like a brother to me for so many years, still is. He calls me his TV sis. So certainly Mike is high up there on the list for sure.
All right. Mike T got the answer he was looking for, whether he's in Vegas or Ann Arbor. I can confirm NBC only employs great play-by-play broadcasters.
There you go. Yes. Exactly.
Kathryn, thank you so much for joining us. I got to say, it was great to see you on the sideline.
You too, Tony. I know I miss seeing you all in person.
I know. I echo what the ushers said. It's great to have a familiar face back there, but I am excited to see you traveling around and covering that primetime package. When Notre Dame is not playing in primetime, which it does seem like they're playing in primetime every week now, we will make sure to follow you and what you do. So thanks for making some time and thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tony. Keep up the great work.
All right. Thanks a lot.